go. How's it going? Happy Wednesday night. Hope you guys are doing well. Coming to y'all at a new time. Used to do Saturday morning spaces. We're going to start doing these on Wednesday nights live on Facebook. What are all the platforms? We got LinkedIn. We got Twitter. Well, it's X now. We got YouTube. All the other wonderful places. We're going to be coming to you guys live on Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. So, biggest thing that's going on, obviously, is the ETFs. What does that mean for crypto? I was really blessed to be on Around the Blockchain earlier today and we talked about, that's really all we talked about. They had other topics of discussion, and they just stayed on the ETF the whole time. That's kind of the whole buzz. We didn't see a big pop in price, but they're not trading yet, right? So we got the approval today for all of the different ETFs, ARK, Fidelity, BlackRock, Grayscale, on and on and on. Pretty good. There's some interesting things that I want to go over tonight, different implications that I think it's going to have for the broader crypto market outside of Bitcoin. I'm a little bit bearish on Bitcoin, just personally. I hope I'm completely wrong. I hope that it, takes off and goes to the moon and everybody makes a whole bunch of money, all-time highs and all the things that people are screaming for. But I don't know. I just have a feeling. I watched a bunch of TA guys, and they all seem to think that we're at retracement levels here, and we could see it come back down to at least 30,000. We will see what plays out. Oh, we got some people asking some questions here in the chat. I'm gonna go ahead and run down a few things, and then we'll get into the chat. We'll do Ask Me Anything. I like getting back and forth with people. I did want to show you guys a video. Is really the main thing that I wanted to discuss. So on Around the Blockchain, I alluded to this, but I'm really gonna dive deep into what I think is a real possibility for the broader implications on crypto with the launch of these ETFs. So go ahead and hop over here. This one, we got Jay Clayton, who put out a statement. I guess it was last Friday. He was on CNBC here, and he talks about the three things that are required for the ETFs for Bitcoin to be successful. So I'm going to go ahead and play that for you guys, and then we'll get into what I think he's talking about.
Well, Lehman, let me talk about the SEC's role here, and what I would say is the three things the SEC felt that they had to get right before they approve it. And approval is not certain, but I've said that approval this week is not certain, but I believe approval eventually is inevitable.
It feels like
what do they have to get right? It's coming. Yeah. What do they have to get? The disclosure has to be okay, so that people understand what they're buying. The second thing is the underlying trading market has to be efficacious. It has to be of a quality that manipulation, the type of just bad behavior that you don't want to see in an underlying trading market is eliminated or at an acceptable minimum. And then lastly, and this is very important here with the digital asset, the pipes have to work. The product itself, the custody, the create, the redemption, Kate talked about, to have gotten comfortable that all those things are going to function as they should.
All right, if you did, that would be great. But he really lays out three things that the SEC had to get right for the Bitcoin ETF. So one is disclosures. People have to be aware of the risks with this asset. I'm sure, if you're reading through the documentations and the S1s that were filed, they were very particular about, disclosing all those risks in there. Secondary to that, they've got to make sure that, it's going to work with the current systems that they have in place. And that's really what I want to harp on here. So he talks about the pipes being laid to be able to facilitate rebalancing, redemption, all of the things that are a bit trickier, right? Especially with an asset that trades like Bitcoin. The exchanges, the interoperability between the trading desks and the exchanges, the liquidity in the market, how that's going to work. I think that you could see a situation where in order to use this at scale and actually make it happen, they need the DTCC to be running on blockchain. We know that Project Ion was developed by R3 in correlation with the DTCC and has been running in tandem with the stock market for an extended period of time. So, and this is complete speculation, not saying it's going to happen, but I think for them to use this and have it trade the way they want it to, you might actually see an implementation of XRP at scale for settling all the transactions for the ETFs. Now, I know, complete speculation and hype. We'll see what happens with that. Maybe it requires that they launch the ETF for XRP. We've got people that have added XRP back to their funds like Grayscale. We've got other financial products for XRP, like the ETP that's been launched in Europe by Fidelity. JP Morgan has a fund. Arrington Capital launched a fund back in September where they raised $306 million to put it in on XRP. Those are private investments. But the ETF that was filed by BlackRock back on November 13th, I don't think was fake. There's too many people that have to sign that and too many checks and balances for somebody to fake that. They didn't even put out a statement that it was being investigated by the DOJ. They just retweeted a statement by Bloomberg that's what they said. Be interesting to see how quickly an ETF could get approved for XRP, or if it's going to be required to actually make this work on the back end. We'll have to see which way it goes. But that's anyway. Him saying the pipes just got me thinking that Ripple and David Schwartz and all these people kind of are considered the plumbers of the new financial system and the infrastructure there. I don't know if he was being cheeky and just paying homage to that. Or maybe it has nothing to do with it. But words normally mean things. Old digital asset investor likes to say that. And I tend to believe the same thing. So I always try to catch things when people are talking and see, if there's something further behind the words than just face value. But that's what I wanted to share with you guys. Just interesting language that was used there, and we'll see what actually comes of it, when everything shakes out. We do have a bunch of questions in the chat here, so go ahead and run these down. Hang out for an hour with you guys. Appreciate y'all joining me, like I said, on a Wednesday night. If you do have a question, it can be in regards to anything, right? It can be family office related, it can be mastermind related, it can be tax related, it can be estate planning, it can be, what do I do? Don't disclose, don't dox yourself on how much XRP or investment in digital assets. It can be private equity, it could be, whatever you guys want to run down, I'm here for it. But we'll go ahead and get into some of the questions that have been asked here. So we got Sammy Boy. He said, I got a question for you. Is it too late to create a trust for our crypto for tax purposes? It's never too late. Even after we see some price appreciation, it's not too late. You're just going to be in a different position, right? So depending on what country you're in, you're going to have different tax consequences for moving those assets into a trust or gifting them. If you're Canadian, it's never too late. Canadians have zero gift tax. They can gift as much as they want as, their whole life. There's no limits there. I've had a lot of people reach out to me from Canada wanting to be proactive, which I think is great. But for them, they can gift it into a trust later on, even after they've already had crazy amounts of price appreciation. Here in the U.S., a little bit different. You got $12.92 million per person that you can gift into an estate with no tax implications. Anything beyond that's going to be taxed at 40% just for moving it, whether you sold it or not. So just be aware of those things. Uncle Sam wants his piece one way or another. And if you get things in there while it's at a lower price, obviously you don't have to worry about it. And you get to keep your lifetime gift tax, and you can gift things later on and, use that a different way. So that would be the benefit of getting things into a trust previous to price appreciation, is just you don't have to deal with those potential tax implications that are going to be involved with that if you wait till you're beyond that threshold. If you're married, you get 25.84 million. Moving things into an LLC, you get even more flexibility because we can gift small portions of equity to other people in your family or people that you want to take care of, and then we can get a valuation done on that LLC, and it actually brings down the valuation. So let's say he had $100 million just for math in an LLC, and we gifted 2% to some person of interest to you that you wanted to take care of, and another 5% to somebody else. Now we could get a valuation done on that LLC, and it might be worth $70 million. So you take a 30% haircut, but if you're wanting to move those assets into a trust, that's another lever you can pull. And then we've got all the tax benefits of an LLC that are involved there. So that's my recommendation for most people, in anticipation of some pretty significant price appreciation. It doesn't make sense for everybody. It's another tool, but it'll give you a lot of flexibility, and you can mitigate some taxes that way. Got a few more questions here. We got Monarchy International. Anything I can share on PolySign? So I did get to talk to Jack McDonald last week. He was nice enough to call me. We have we have a decent sized account with them for our clients. So we hold our clients' assets there. We have the first ever wealth management account for Digital Ascension Group, the family office that we run. All of our clients, custody their assets with them. They're insured up to $50 million per vault. And so get to talk to him, which is nice. I don't have any concerns about the solvency on our clients' funds. We've had no interruption in service or business. No problems with withdrawals, like business as usual, onboarding people, and then also transactions. He let me know that, they've mended the relationship with Boathouse. Couldn't give me full details on what that means, but they have a path forward, and at some point they will issue a public statement. It may take until after they actually have repaid the debt with Boathouse. But we'll see what ends up happening with everything. I'm confident that they'll be fine. I've got undying faith in them. They've always been great to me. Every interaction I've ever had with them has been great. Customer service is always on point. But yeah, what does that mean for equity holders? I think that's where a lot of people are at. I think they will be fine, and those that own equity there probably will do really well, if everything works out and they do end up getting acquired or IPOing. Let's see here. A couple more people in the chat. Appreciate you guys over here. I see that doubtful smile. And yes, this is recorded. It'll be available later on. If the SEC doesn't want to settle with Ripple, why would they give the green light to XRP ETF? Well, they don't have to. So XRP has been given clarity as not a security, separate and independent of anything of the outcomes with the lawsuit. That was, designated on July 13th this last year, and anything that's left in the lawsuit is just early sales of XRP by Ripple. Do those constitute securities? It's likely that they do, and that they will probably have to pay a fine associated with that to the SEC. What is that amount? A lot of the prominent lawyers in the space kind of discuss that, 20 million or less is likely the scenario that plays out there. They could settle at any time. There was something that was due today in the case. I know that, we have until like April before there's supposed to be like full disclosure, but it won't go to trial at this point. All the facts that have come out in discovery are obviously public. There's a portion of things that have been redacted. But really it's just down to negotiating whatever the settlement's going to be. And again, those are going to be for early shares. So Ripple is also completely independent of XRP. The XRPL is a decentralized network that anybody can build on. You got Zahao. You got a bunch of people that are building on the Hook side chain, the EVM side chain. Hopefully, we've got an amendment up right now on the XRPL that is XLS38D that allows for interoperability between the side chains and the mainnet. We've also got digital identity that's up for vote, which is XLS40D. And, those are two pretty big implications for the use of this technology at scale for financial markets. And, I'm hopeful that those get approved a little bit faster than the AMM and the clawback and some of the other amendments that have been hanging out since October of last year, going back and forth, people that run validators voting on them. But back to the point there, Ripple just leverages that network to facilitate use case for its business. It is not the end-all be-all for the XRPL. Even if Ripple went bankrupt tomorrow, the XRPL would still exist completely independent of Ripple. And that was really the point of the case, was that XRP is not a security of Ripple. They've just developed technology that uses it, and it is a public network, just like the internet. So the SEC could easily greenlight an XRP ETF, just like Bitcoin is completely independent of any company. So is XRP. And so I think that would be completely reasonable for them to go ahead and launch an ETF. Let's see, what else we got here? Jake, can you expound on the statement Brad Garlinghouse made about 100x in the upcoming 3 to 5 years? So we did have the wonderful opportunity to go to Swell this year because of one of the projects that we're developing in correlation with R3, and really enjoyed that. Got to network with a lot of impressive people there. Got to meet with Medico and some of the other Ripple partners. When he was talking about that, you get that big grin. Everybody there was very bullish on crypto and the whole space in general. They had Polygon, the CEO of Polygon, came and spoke there at Swell this year, which is a layer 2 for Ethereum. So it's odd to me that they were there, unless there's something else more strategic going on. But I think, and that's what he said, a 10 to 100x in the market cap of crypto over the next 5 to 10 years was, I think, the time frame that he listed. I think that that's probably undersold a little bit, just personally. I think that you could likely tokenize the majority of the economy over the next 10 years. 5 years, probably a stretch. 3 to 5 years, I think we have financial markets handled, and the majority of financial products have been tokenized. But when it comes to real world assets, real estate in particular, cars, we're dealing with cars. I don't know how that is. A lot of these documents are held by counties, and they're still on paper, and they're in file cabinets. And until somebody figures out how you can scan that and move that over to a digital title that's issued against whatever that item is, and do that in an efficient way, it's going to take a lot of man hours, resources in order to tokenize the majority of this stuff. And you're going to have a lot of people that have hesitation. They're going to have to be, re-educated on this stuff. The majority of the people that work in these county courthouses have no clue that blockchain or smart contracts even exist. So it's just going to take time on that side. I think the broader financial markets are likely to be tokenized. 3 to 5 years seems reasonable, probably closer to 5. And just that alone would give the 10 to 100x that Brad was talking about. How far out do you think we are from getting loans against the XRP, or is that something you can do first? Now, I can get that done now. Maple Finance is a partner that we have. If your assets are held at PolySign, and you've got at least $3 million in XRP, $2 million, if you've got at least $2 million worth of XRP, I can get you a loan right now. The interest rate's not that great. It's not my favorite, but as long as you're putting it somewhere that generates more yield than the interest that you're paying, it can be a good solution. I'm hopeful that we, if I'm right, I say that all the time. We'll see if I am or not. I don't have a crystal ball, but my expectation for XRP if it's used the way that I think it will be, it ends up being designated as a tier 1 asset in the banking system, and similar to U.S. Treasuries and gold, you should be able to get a pretty preferable rate for loans against it because it'll be riskless. That's the designation. What that means if it's tier 1 collateral, and if that's the case, might be able to pull loans against it at 3 to 6%, and then redeploy that capital into. There's lots of stuff that's generating 10, 12, 15, 18% right now because of where the interest rates have moved to. So I can do it now, but like I said, the interest rate's not the best in the world, and you do have to have a decent amount of XRP to be able to do it. Grow Up says, can you expound on Ripple's background buying back, I think it's supposed to be buying back shares. Yeah, so we participated in that. We run private investments through Beyond Broke Mastermind. We sit directly on Ripple's cap table with many of the funds that we run there, and we participated in the buyback on 2 of those SPVs that we ran, not by choice, but we did participate. So they're buying back up to $285 million worth of their shares at a premium of $61.48 a share. I see a lot of stuff out there that people just really don't know what they're talking about. So I'll kind of break that down for you. Why would they do that, and what does that mean? Well, they're doing that to be able to provide some liquidity for people that want to pay investors out or recoup some of their money. There's a lot of investors that have been in since 2014. We're looking at 10 years with no way to get your money back out of the deal. That's even for a private equity deal, that's a long time. And so with that, they're trying to provide some relief and returns for people. A lot of these people got in under $1 on their investment for the equity. So if they're paying $61.48 a share, that's a 61x return. Pretty good. They are buying back up to 6% of the Ripple shares that people own. So if you had, let's say you had 10,000 shares, they're going to buy back 600 of them at that rate. And that's if, it depends on how many people are going to participate. The last tender offer they did before this one was only for a certain section of shares, and it was also at $61.49. They had almost 70% of the people that could have participate in that. The larger institutions did not participate in that, just so you're aware. And we'll see, what percentage it ends up being after everything's diluted and shakes out. They've got till the 15th to disclose that, and then they'll make the payments after the 19th. Everything had to be submitted by last Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So why would Ripple? They would have to think that the absolute best use of the capital that they have on hand, $1.4 billion is the cash that they have on hand. $285 million worth of that, they would have to think that that was the best use of that capital to buy back shares at a premium. So, to me, that means that they're bullish on their own stock, and they're buying it back off the market because they believe that the company's worth more than what they're buying it back at. So they're buying it back at $11 billion valuation. If Linda P. Jones is right and they IPO at somewhere between $400 and $600, that's a really good investment on their part, especially if they're going to sell those shares onto the open market through a direct listing, which is kind of my anticipation. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. I could be completely wrong, as always, but I think that they understand that their stock is going to command a premium, and they're also providing relief for their investors, and those are some of the factors that are contributing to as to why they, issued the buyback and the tender offer. Do you believe that French Hill is correct in that stablecoin regulation will be passed in Q1? I do. I have to agree there with Congressman French Hill. We got to see him at the Arkansas Republican meeting Last year he came and spoke, which was pretty cool. And sharp guy, really understands what he's talking about when it comes to blockchain, smart contracts, Web3, and the implications of that. And I think he's a really good person to have in Congress to kind of be a proponent of those things and help things get passed. And if he says Q1, then I'm on board with him Q1. In Australian dollar, I was told that you have to pay tax when transferring assets into a trust. Yeah, Australia sucks when it comes to setting up a family trust there and all the things that are involved with that. The UK and Australia are some of the worst jurisdictions globally when it comes to taxes. Anything that's under the monarchy, they're going to rake you. So the sooner that you can get into a trust, the better you're going to be, the less taxes you're going to have to pay in those jurisdictions. In the UK, a trust really doesn't even offer you a lot of the protections. If you die within 7 years, it unwinds itself and you don't get any of the benefits. Most people that we work with in the UK look to Portugal, Monaco, or Nevis to establish things. Sometimes Switzerland also, Luxembourg. There's a few other jurisdictions over there in Europe that are favorable for that, but Portugal most often is kind of the haven there for most people in the UK. Australia, if you're an Australian citizen, they're going to get you. Like I said, the sooner you can get it in there, the better for you as far as the taxes go. Ripple buyback their shares. I just talked about that. Polysign business as usual. Yes. Getting mixed answers from people. Q1 on the regulation. That's my expectation. Can you speak about off-ramping? I've heard people have issues moving large amounts of profit, exchange to bank account. Have you had issues like this? This is a good question, Matty G. I don't know if you're the Matty G that has the YouTube channel that had Quincy on it a long time ago. If you are, cool that you're listening. Yes, so a lot of people are going to have problems with that. If you don't have an OTC desk or a broker that you're working with to be able to exchange and sell your crypto when the time comes, that's already linked to an LLC or a trust account if you've moved your assets in there, and then if you don't already have bank accounts established for that trust or LLC, you're going to have problems. If you're doing it in your personal name and you don't have, a banker friend that you've been working with, have one of those high roller accounts at a bank that people talk about. There's a name for it that escapes me right now. It's late in the evening and I apologize. But yeah, I would get things done on the front end. If you guys are interested in Uphold Institutional, you can message me through the website. I can connect you with them. If you're going to be executing trades north of $250,000, they have really favorable fees. The institutional side of their platform is not something they really promote well, or haven't up to this point, and we're really blessed to have a partnership with them to be able to help them scale that. So if it's something you're interested in, I've talked about Caleb and Brown in the past. Still a proponent of them. I think they do a fantastic job with their white glove service and the brokers over there. They need to get a little more competitive on the fees, in my opinion. But here's the deal about Australia. It's the most stringent financial regulated jurisdiction on the planet. There's a lot of compliance and regulatory cost associated with doing business there. And so they need to charge a premium in order to be able to cover those things and pay their people. So I understand why they charge, 3% on transactions. But yeah, I would find a broker that you can work with to be able to off-ramp. Uphold Institutional allows you to send however much money you need to your bank account same day. Whatever's been hooked up, I would do some transactions before you plan to off-ramp a large amount just to make sure. Kraken is another really good solution. They have an institutional account there. I think you can liquidate up to like 10 million a day. So there's some options for you that you might look into previous to price appreciation. Let's see here. Can you explain, and this is Dimu, can you explain what you learned at Swell Conference The importance of Medico being part of Ripple. Yeah, so that acquisition was huge for Ripple. One, Medico is international, and they really didn't have a whole lot of partnerships here in the U.S. They've really developed banking relationships globally outside of the U.S. So one, that now pulls Ripple into scope, and the partnerships that they had established are now with Ripple as well, which is great. We've talked to them. We plan to potentially integrate them with one of the other things that we're building out. They have a product called Harmonize, and it basically allows you to build out governance around the payment flows for stable coins and crypto, and allows you to set up custody environments if you are a bank or regulated institution for your clients to be able to hold or send or receive digital assets. Ripple didn't have that. The two main components that are required for financial markets and for this stuff to be implemented at scale: custody and identity. And I just told you guys that XLS40D digital identity is up for vote. That has huge implications for the XRPL and the mainnet and its ability to be able to, transact financial transactions at scale. So Medico's the custody component of that, and that acquisition, like I said, probably one of the biggest things that happened for Ripple last year. Andy says, Jake, do you really think XRP will pump after these BS ETFs go live? I think it's going to, like I said at the beginning of this, I think it potentially requires XRP to facilitate the trading of these ETFs. So yes, I do think that these ETFs going live, these BS ETFs going live, will have implications for XRP, completely separate of whatever money actually flows into the market. How can you have an XRP ETF at such a low price? It's an exchange traded fund. You just have people that buy large allocations of it, and people would move money there. My anticipation is that the price will increase substantially, probably in correlation with or prior to an ETF being launched. Again, from actual use case and utility. We'll see if I'm right or not. Again, no crystal ball, but that's where we're at. Kelly, hey, appreciate you hopping on here, man. Glad you guys had a good vacation, and excited to see you on here. Do you think XRP holders who have been decimated over the last 4 years will get damages from the SEC? No. I actually don't view what's happened over the last 3 years as being decimated. I think that the SEC lawsuit was a blessing in disguise. We wouldn't have regulatory clarity on XRP aside from everything else. It almost gives XRP a moat moving forward. I just don't think people have realized that yet. And I think you won't even care about the damages from the SEC once we do have price appreciation from the implications that have happened with the case. So I think that'll be your reparations, will be the price appreciation that we see. Ross, coin regulation in Q1, like French Hill says. What do we get aside from that? I think NFTs are a way out. I think broader regulation on crypto is a ways out. We had the EU go live with their sandbox regulation Monday this week. So people there are able to launch a token in a regulated way. They know what the guide rails are and everything. That's the same thing in Singapore. It's the same thing in the AUE. There's some differences in the laws, but in general, you know what the law is. Here in the U.S., it's still ambiguous. Just hope you don't get sued by the SEC, and maybe you will, maybe you won't. If you do things like Ripple, I think that'll probably be the guideline, right? Like if you're launching your token in the same manner that they did, and it's gifted to somebody else that they could then build out the network and use it in business use cases and incentivize people. You just don't want it to be correlated to a company, right, as a security. So the company that's building on the network, you can't call it an initial coin offering. a lot of the language that was used by Vitalik completely makes Ethereum a security. I think that proof of work, and this is a big statement, but I'll go ahead and say it. And again, with a grain of salt, take it. I think that anything that is actual proof of work that's not delegated, or I'm sorry, proof of work and anything that's actual proof of stake, not delegated proof of stake, will be considered a security when it all shakes out. But yeah, I think we could see some pretty significant crypto regulations here in the US for stablecoins in 2024. Kelly says, what are the differences between Zahao, smart contracts, and EVM? I believe the language in which they're coded in is the primary difference. Zahao, I believe, is Java, and the EVM is going to be Python and Solidity. And I'm not a coder, so I know that there are some specific smart contract capabilities and the way that things function. We'd say Win could hammer that, right? Like, he could knock that out of the park. Even Fredo, who's a business partner of mine, could probably answer that a bit better than I can. From the little bit that I know, that would be what I would say. The main difference is the coding base and the language that's used on those side chains is different. Now, the capabilities probably similar. I'm excited for smart contracts to be built out on these side chains. That's really the next iteration of the XRPL. And then you got to have interoperability between the mainnet and the side chains. XLS38D, that's what allows that. Zahao wasn't launched to the mainnet. The hooks, so hooks is the side chain. Zahao is the network on the side chain. The EVM, I'm not sure who all is developing on the EVM side chain for the XRPL. Robert Higgins, I am a Bahama resident living in the Bahamas at present. Do you deal with Bahamian residents? We do deal with Bahamian residents, and you're very blessed to be there. Aside from the weather, a really good jurisdiction for taxes there in the Bahamas. We have people that set up a lot of things in the Caymans, depending on who they are, and but yeah, happy to work with anybody internationally. Our estate planners are versed in international tax law and can help anybody. And if they don't feel comfortable, we have people in different jurisdictions globally that we work with as well. Do you think XRP will rise after the BTC the BTC ETF goes live tomorrow? Yes, I do. I think that we've already seen an uptick in price. Is it going to be crazy? Is it going to be slow? Your guess is as good as mine on that one. If it actually is used to facilitate the settlement of the ETF trading, I think you could see some pretty significant price appreciation associated with that. If an ETF were launched, potentially some pretty significant price appreciation associated with that as well. Are you excited, as Chad Stanberger is about the ETF tomorrow morning? Honestly, I am. I'm trying to hide it on here, but yo, Quincy, what's up, man? I'm pretty pumped for the ETF launch tomorrow. Like I said, I think it has broader implications for crypto as a whole than the majority of people realize. If Jay Clayton is talking about the pipes, like we showed at the beginning of this, probably, again, words mean things. We'll see. But I'm hopeful that, Project Ion, the DTCC, and BlackRock, Robbie Mitchnick's over there, maybe there's a correlation with XRP price appreciation when the ETFs go live. Hey, appreciate you coming on from India. I don't know what time it is there, but very cool that you're on here. Cassandra says, thank you for all you do. Yeah, I appreciate you, Cassandra. If you guys don't know Cassandra, go follow her. She does a lot of really good stuff for AI. She's a hairdresser. She's a very wonderful woman, very giving person. I appreciate you. We have a lot of good people in the Mastermind, Can't say enough about the culture that's been built there and the people that are part of it. If you want to get away from all of the craziness and negativity that's on a lot of the social media platforms, really proud of, the community over there and the atmosphere and what goes on. We don't have any of that, which is refreshing. When do you think crypto will decouple from weekly U.S. data? When we see actual utility, when it's no longer a speculative asset class. Capital flows, it's been very correlated to the stock market and will continue to be that way until we see actual utility of these assets and value in them is driven by volume over networks instead of the exchange's volume. That's when we would see a decoupling. What is the average and most amount of XRP clients hold? So for the family office, I have clients that are, we start with working with somebody around 20 million in assets under management, and that's not always all crypto. Sometimes we come on as an ancillary advisor for family office that has an allocation to crypto. Most of them are somewhere between 1% and 5%. A lot of them have reduced their allocation over the last period after everything that's happened with FTX and Voyager and Celsius over the last 2 years. So the majority of our clients, for the amount of XRP that they hold, if I had to pick an average, a couple million would probably be average. But that's, it's how things currently exist. We have people that we work with to prepare for things, previous to a liquidity event that are far below that. We have clients that hold Bitcoin and Ethereum and other things. I don't know what's going to happen with those. We'll see. Like I said earlier, I hope they go to the moon. We've seen Ethereum jump pretty significantly over the last 24 hours. I think there's some headwinds for those projects. Maybe some tailwinds for some other ones. But that doesn't mean they don't persist and continue to, grow over time. We'll see. But on average, yeah, I would say a couple million XRP for our clients that we work with, for the family office, and then proactive clients. I've had meetings with people that had 20,000 XRP. I don't mind meeting with those people. I think that if you're holding XRP in that quantity, you're already rich. You just don't know it yet. And we'll see what happens. I think that when this is used at scale, you're going to see some crazy numbers. People are going to have a hard time conceptualizing, and people are going to come into a lot of money very quickly. And hopefully I've just got people thinking about, more than Lambos and houses. You're thinking about how you can structure your estate to mitigate risk, how you can hedge investments, how you can, leverage your assets to be able to, mitigate taxes by taking loans against them, then deploying that capital into something that cash flows at a higher cash on cash or APY than the interest rate you're drawing against. You're looking into real estate, you're looking into businesses, you're looking into traditional things to hedge against the volatility in this space. That's a lot of what we do, for our clients. We're working on ways to be able to keep exposure so that they're not losing that, but hedging against the volatility and producing cash flow in the short term. If there were an XRP ETF and there were 3 to 6% yield annually, why would they pay a dividend on an ETF? I don't really understand that question. That's not what an ETF. Well, so just JP Morgan, they've got a fund that pays 7.5% on XRP. Potentially that could be. I don't understand your question here. What would be the NAV? What would the NAV be? 3 to 6% of what? Yeah. If you can give me a better breakdown of that, I could probably get into it. Strive for Greatness says, how does XRP go to $1,000 or $100? Volume of transactions on the network. So we'll just talk about Swift. RippleNet or R3 will partner with Swift likely and use XRP as the primary settlement mechanism for those transactions. Swift does 5 trillion a day in volume. So even, depending on how much XRP is used to transact those, is going to be, the price will be driven by supply and demand. And if you had 5 trillion, let's say you only had 10 billion XRP to transact all that, then, and you can use the same XRP up to 10 times a day, according to Robbie Mitchnick's calculator. So now you got 100 billion XRP, you got 5 trillion. You're still looking at $50 XRP to be able to move that. That's where we start getting into some of the crazy numbers, is when, the FX market, commodities, Swift transactions, interbank settlement, DTCC, those are the networks, the financial products and things that need to be tokenized on top of the XRPL to see those crazy numbers that everybody talks about. Until that happens, if it's just driven by retail speculation, we're not going there. You might see $3 again, maybe, if it's retail that's driving it. The only way we get there is institutional adoption, and real world use case. Sound breakdown on the buyback. Yeah. Appreciate that. Is your opinion, why is there no stable coins on the XRPL? The XRP is paired to pretty much every fiat currency on the planet, along with gold and a lot of commodities. There's CBDCs that are currently issued on private chains of the XRPL. Just not public stuff yet. So, and I went to Swell. We got to talk to Joel, who's the head of CBDC for Ripple. So there are stable coins issued on the network, just on the private ledger, not on the actual mainnet, because they're trialing them, and then whenever they go live, that's when will see some price appreciation when CBDCs go live on the XRPL also. Oh, you're not that Matty G. Darn. You're still cool in my book. Would you recommend moving digital assets to a Nevis Trust or Nevis LLC for a U.S. citizen for additional protection? I talk to a lot of people, and people want to go offshore with things. Offshore complicates stuff a lot. You're already going to be encumbered by a trustee when you move your assets into a trust to be able to use them the way you want to. You're still going to have control, and they will sign off on transactions as long as you're not, using the assets to pay off creditors. But if you're moving them to an international jurisdiction, it's just a lot of rigmarole, excuse me, to even transact with your stuff. I wouldn't do it unless you're doing something illegal that you're trying to hide. There's really no point. Just play by the rules and the tax laws that are here and pay your taxes when they're due. And people that want to go offshore and do all that, again, more power to you. There might be real reasons for that, aside from anything I've mentioned here. But if you're legit and you're not doing anything illegal, I just say, why? You need a really good justification to do it. I'm not saying there aren't those, that we do have them. I've had some, but in most, I'd say 95% of situations, there's no need for international stuff if you're here in the U.S. Other jurisdictions where tax laws are more stringent and trusts don't provide as much protection, yeah, I could see that. Like the UK, like I mentioned. Canada is another one where we have a lot of people that go to the Bahamas and Caymans and stuff. Aaron Grinhouse is who we work with there to set up that stuff. He's a really good advisor up there in Canada when it comes to digital assets, if that's something that you guys are interested in. Happy to share his information as well. Scott Carroll says, are you excited as Chad? Oh, yeah. Well, I answered that one. Yes, I secretly I'm jumping up and down. I'm pretty excited for tomorrow. I think there's going to be a lot of implications that people just don't wrap their mind around yet. Hi, roller account, unfortunately. Yeah, well, and most people, you know, I'll just be real with you guys. There's not a whole lot of people um, that have millions of XRP. I'm very privileged to know the people that I do. I feel very grateful to be in a position where I can help them and provide value. Um, but well, let's just break this down real quick. We're just now at 5 million wallets. Totally. Out of 8 billion people on the planet, there's 5 million wallets on the XRPL. Okay? To be in the top 10% of wallets, you have to hold more than like 3,500 XRP. Okay, so now we're down to 500,000 wallets on the planet that holds more than that XRP. Now we'll go even deeper. The majority of the, like, I've met with over 500 people that are in the XRP community that hold a decent amount. You know, they're being proactive. They're setting things up, setting up LLCs, moving assets into trusts, doing stuff. Some of them don't need to because they don't have enough to justify it, and the cost would be better spent on acquiring more digital assets than, you know, setting things up, because they're not going to be able to offset any taxes. They're not going to have any taxes. But aside from that, the majority of the people that I meet with that have more than that amount have somewhere between 2 and 7 wallets. I'd say on average probably about 4. Okay. Just, you know, holding it on different exchanges, or maybe they got, you know, multiple ledgers, they got a decent, they've got different wallets that they're holding stuff in for different reasons, just to diversify and mitigate risk of, you know, getting hacked in one wallet and losing everything that they have. So let's think about that. We got a 500,000 wallets that have more than 3,500, and on average, the person that has that much has 4 wallets that have more than that. So now we're at 125,000 people on the planet, not including the institutions and exchanges and Ripple employees that hold XRP. So we're really probably looking closer like maybe 120,000, maybe, you know, like 115,000 people that have more than 3,500 XRP. Like, if you have an investment in this at all, you're a little speck of society. And, you know, very blessed to be here with people that are, that even know about this, right? Have to have an internet connection. You got to be able to, you know, read on Twitter or go somewhere else and figure things out. Not a whole lot of people even know about any of this. Caleb Brown has offices in London now. Might help with fees. Yeah, my broker, Andrew, is out of London. So I was wondering about that. It's still pretty significant on the fees. The lowest I've heard anybody paying, and this is not us, is 1% on transactions over $1 million. So, you know, like I mentioned with Uphold, they're 15 to 30 basis points, which is still going to be like 5 to 7 times cheaper than 1%. So that's what I'm saying on the fees. I think that they, but again, the jurisdiction that they operate out of requires that. So is what it is. Wow, you guys are doing great in the chat, and I appreciate y'all. I'm going to try to get to everybody's questions here. Because of tax implications in Australia when creating a trust, do you think it's worth it? Yes. Yes, it is. The benefits that that'll provide later on for you are very beneficial there in Australia. Kent is our guy there. We're working with him to be able to establish a presence there in the AU. And he's very well connected, deals with some high-end family offices. And he's the only person that I've ever met from Australia that had a family trust already established and invested in XRP through an SPV, or a special purpose vehicle. I'm like, you know what's going on, man. I'm glad somebody over there has it together. But yeah, it's costly. It's not cheap to do, but I would say it definitely is worth it, especially previous to price appreciation there in Australia. Will there be a stablecoin on the XRPL? There's going to be so many stablecoins on the XRPL. Currencies, yeah, yes, is the short answer to that. They got away with the SEC suit, all harassment. Again, you know, I've got a very different opinion on this than everybody else, and that's okay. And you guys can not like it. it's fine. I think Gary's on our team. I think Gary is pro XRP. You don't go talking about it the way you did at MIT and understanding it at scale the way he does, to then pivoting and hating it and trying to sue it. Everything that's transpired, I think, has been on purpose in order to give it legal clarity before, above, and beyond everything else in the market. And yeah, it sucked while it's been going on. I'm not saying it didn't, but it's also allowed you an extra 3 years to accumulate. So there's a lot of people that wouldn't even be here if the lawsuit hadn't happened. They wouldn't have found it. And if it had been implemented then, you know, people miss out on opportunities. So I think it's been a blessing in disguise for the majority of the community, and, you know, anybody that's been able to acquire some or more during that time period. Just want to mention, nothing here is financial advice. All for entertainment and educational purposes only. Please always consult with your financial advisor before making any investment decisions. I am not a financial advisor and cannot give financial advice. Luke says, can you speak a little bit more about how to communicate with a bank when setting up an LLC? I know your stance is not to mention crypto. Can you elaborate? Yeah. So it depends on what type of LLC you have. Do you have a trading LLC or do you have a holding company? I recommend a holding company for most people that aren't going to execute more than 20 trades a year. The NAICS code for that is 551112 or 551114. Either one of those works. You'll list that on your documentation. You'll draft your operating agreement. You'll move the assets in there on your operating agreement, and you'll list those on the capital contributions page of that document when you draft it. You'll get that notarized. You don't have to share that page with the bank when you share that document, because they will ask for it. When you go in there, you're just going to say, look, I'm gonna move some larger amounts of money into this account. I want to establish it before I take profits from my investments. This is for my holding company, and I'm just going to be moving large amounts of capital here before I then make allocations to other investments. And they're going to nod and go, okay, wow, that's great. Yeah, please come this way. We would love to have your large amounts of capital at our bank. And you don't have to tell them these are crypto investments. You can say that you invest in private equity and real estate and a bunch of different things. You got your money spread out, which may or may not be, you know, I'm not saying to lie to them, but, you know, if you tell them it's associated with crypto, they're not going to do it. So just state that it's investments and you're going to be taking profits. They're going to be large profits. And you need a secure bank account to be able to hold those in before you make decisions on where you're going to reallocate that. And yeah, you shouldn't have any problems if that's the way you discuss it with them. I've set up multiple. The banks, you know, that we work with, Mercury, I think is great. I had somebody tell me they got rejected from Mercury the other day because they put crypto stuff on there. Bank of America, you know, Chase, Wells Fargo, all of them are chomping at the bit. They're all here. They're all about to implement custody over the next 6 months to a year. HSBC, you know, partnered with Medico in this first quarter. They're going to be launching custody for digital assets. I think that we're going to see a rapid acceleration of the adoption of this stuff here in Q1. Could be wrong. Don't have a crystal ball, like I said, but that's my anticipation, and that would be how I would speak to the bank until that takes place. Critch says, can you explain what Quincy talked about on the debt to assets of XRPL? Yes. I actually had a conversation earlier today about this. So, you know, two sides of a balance sheet in accounting. So one person's debt is another person's asset on their sheet because they're going to be making payments. So, like, you have some type of structured debt with a bank, they'll roll that up into a CDL or a collateralized debt obligation, and then they sell that off to a pension fund or somebody else that needs regular payments to be able to facilitate things to the people that they're paying to. And they'll buy it at a discount from the future cash flows because that's what they need is the cash flows. So you've got an asset on somebody's balance sheet, and you got a liability on somebody else's balance sheet. Whatever you think is all the money, you just go ahead and double that, because to be able to represent it on 2 different balance sheets, you're going to need double the value. Is really what that comes down to. And I think, if you can find the video by Quincy, he puts it maybe a little bit more. He articulates it better than that, and is a little more eloquent when he speaks. Sometimes I really like Quincy, and he does a good job explaining things. Let's see here. Come get rugged in the Beyond Broke Mastermind. Oh, plugged. It says plugged. I was like, okay. Great group of people. No, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I would agree. There's a lot of really good people in there, and we provide, opportunities. There was nobody else that was actually going to put together an investment group before any of this happened. That was our mission last year, was to actually get that off the ground and execute. We ran 9 deals for everybody that was in the group, allocated more than $3.5 million to different investments, provided a way that non-accredited, sophisticated investors, people that were part of the group, could get in on those deals. And we only run deals. I will only ever run deals with family office clients and people that are in the mastermind group. I get a lot of deal flow every single week. Somebody's pitching me something. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's trash. But all those opportunities are going to be headed to family office clients and people in the mastermind group. So everybody that's there, like I said, just really blessed and appreciate, the community and what we've built. What are your price views on price suppression? What are your views on price suppression of XRP? Yeah, they're holding it down so that institutions can continue to acquire it at a reasonable rate over the counter. Uses that. They have relationships with all the other brokers and OTC desks, and they trade within a band. They beat the volume weighted average over a certain period of time. If you want to, sell 3 million deal and you have slip pricing than what the market was, and it doesn't move the market, and you don't have the fees and the slippage associated with all that. So that's how they're entering. There are people that are buying over the counter in large sums that are not affecting price, and people just don't know it. Do you think FTX will reopen? Ooh, that's a good question, Kelly. And will GG get subpoenaed for ETHgate? I think Hinman gets subpoenaed for ETHgate. I think GG, like I said, I think GG's on our side. I know that's not a popular opinion, but that's Gary Gensler. I think he's actually on Team Ripple. FTX, will they reopen? Man, I think there's just too much bad blood at this point. I think too many people got burned. I don't think that it's salvageable, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, I just don't think that they have a trust. There's nobody that's going to trust that organization at this point. Anybody that is just going to speculate on the token. We've seen that. But as far as an actual business, I don't think that they have a viable business or way that they could operate. Who's been the most impactful mentor you've learned a lot from during your Beyond Broke crypto business pursuits? Oh, man. YouTube, if I'm going to be real with you. This platform has provided me a way to get access to people that I definitely wouldn't have. Alex Hormozy's great. I listen to Jim Rohn and Earl Nightingale and Goggins. What's Tony's last name? Anyway, there's a lot of people that I listen to for extended periods of time on YouTube. Some of them I've had the pleasure of meeting in real life. And then I have some other people that I've got a gentleman that runs an AI hedge fund. Very intelligent gentleman. I don't bug him very often unless I have, I'm at a point where I really want his input. He's been impactful. I've got a lot of good friends that run, 10-figure businesses that I run things by, and they're very helpful. But yeah, just put yourself around good people is really what it comes down to. And sometimes you have to pay for access to that stuff. Like 5-6 years ago, I didn't understand that. And I paid way more than I was comfortable with to be in certain mastermind groups and put myself in certain situations, sponsor certain events. And doing that has opened more doors for me than anything else. Been around a lot of really intelligent, good people, and just provided the value that I could, and it's created some really good synergistic relationships. Man, a lot of people here in the chat. I appreciate you guys. Hi Jake, is there a minimum level of assets an individual should hold in digital assets, cryptocurrency to establish a trust or an LLC to contact? I'll say this. I can provide the most value to somebody that has somewhere north of $50,000 invested in digital assets. If somebody has less than that, I can still provide the same resources, but my recommendation most of the time is just going to be to sit on your hands until things happen, and then, you know, make some moves after that, and you'll have the resources readily available to do it. But somebody that has more than that, I feel really good about our ability to help them be proactive and get things set up previous to a liquidity event that'll actually be tangible results for them. Hi from Australia. Hey, appreciate you hopping on here. This is cool to have a bunch of international people on here. That's what I get at nighttime, you know. Everybody else asleep here in the U.S. The rest of the world's awake. Can you please let us know about your mastermind group? Does it help people who are outside the U.S.? Yeah, we actually have designated channels in the mastermind group for Australia, UK, and Canada. We have people from Japan, Brazil, all those different jurisdictions across the planet. We have members from there. And I'm not proficient with all the tax law and things in those jurisdictions, but I can help people learn and set things up. A lot of it kind of overlays. One of the main things that's the same across the globe is debt is not income. So if you're going to be able to leverage your assets in some capacity, you know, that's a benefit. The private investments that we run are open to international investors that are in the mastermind group. So, yeah, I think we provide a lot of value for people in any jurisdiction, whether that's here in the U.S. or abroad, through the mastermind. Would XRP be taxed going into a charitable remainder trust? Dan, here's the thing about a charitable remainder trust. You have specific investments that have to be made in that, and certain allocations that have to happen in order to meet the criteria for a charitable remainder trust. It is a good option if you are going to liquidate your crypto. So if you're going to sell $1 million in profit, and then you don't want to pay a whole bunch of taxes on that, and you have some philanthropic interest, you can donate the cash to the charitable remainder trust. We're trying to figure out a way that we can keep it in crypto and meet all those criteria that's involved, but that's not something that exists yet. So the short answer to your question is yes, you would have to sell your XRP and there would be a tax event. But you'd be able to offset the taxable event because you're donating it to the charitable remainder trust. So I don't know if that's the answer you wanted. Probably not, but that's currently how things work. What is the best way to reach out to you about preparing for this bull run? Just check out our site. So our site's digitalfamilyoffice.io, or you can join the mastermind. I do twice a week. We do AMAs in there, and we have people that have already set up all these things. They've been through the process multiple times. They help other people with questions. Like I said, just really blessed to have a good community of people there that are knowledgeable and willing to help others. But yeah, you reach out through the website, digitalfamilyoffice.io, if you want to contact me directly, and we'll set up a time and have a conversation. 1 million XRP times $100 equals not a billionaire yet. Yeah, that'd be 100 million. That's correct. If you had 1 million XRP times $100, it'd be 100 million. Now, when XRP gets to $1,000 a piece, then there'll be some billionaires. Hi, Jake. What do you think we can take when do you think we can take loans against our XRP? You, like I said, we have a way that you can take it against your XRP now. Maple Finance provides that. It's a pretty high barrier to entry, and the interest rate's not that great. Favorable loans against your XRP will happen after it's been designated a tier 1 asset in the banking system. When does that happen? I don't know. But that's my anticipation, and that's when, you'll be able to take... There'll be a lot of people lining up to give you loans against it at that point. Quincy recently explained the XRP as a DEX, and that's why it's special. Is Stellar XLM Network a DEX 2? Yes, would be the short answer. Jed McCaleb, copied the XRPL for XLM to a large extent. There's some key differences. They're able to issue as much XLM as they need. The origin account has not been black holed, but they also burnt half the supply that they originally issued. So they don't have an escrow. There's some key differences in the management of XLM, but the functionality of the asset is very similar to XRP and the XRPL. What about XDC? Can we see some crazy price in the future? Absolutely. I'm a big proponent of XDC. I like that network. I like the people that are building on it. I like the use cases. Trade finance is significant. Going to and speaking at the conference in Austin this year with Trey and on XDC, I got to learn a lot more about that. Andre Casterman was there, and his company TradeFi, and what he's been able to scale and build out for trade finance is very similar to the revolution that the banking industry is going through. So he has an ISO standard for how the documents are prepared and the language on the bills of lading and the receivables and all the different documents associated with trade. And then because of that, there's a standard for communication. Then you can scale the instant settlement and tokenization of those instruments. I was really impressed with what they had put together and how far they were, and the things that they were... It's coming down the pike for that network and the partnerships that they have. I don't like giving price predictions, but if I was going to give some for XDC, again, not financial advice, just complete speculation here. I think you could see somewhere between $1 and $3 this go round, if you had some utility along with the speculation for that asset. Can you drag your video to the center of the frame? Oh, here we go. Well, that's better. Appreciate you pointing that out. Canadian. The contact I have in Canada, his name is Aaron Grinhouse. Let me see if I don't know if I can post it here in the chat or not. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Aaron. Wrong one. I'll post his email in the chat if you guys, well, maybe I won't. Oh, because I can't spell Aaron and I can't see. That's why. There he is. Okay. Yeah, it's Aaron at grinhauslaw.ca. I'll go ahead and post it here. I don't know if I can post in my own chat. Well, here. Yeah, we'll show you all the desks. He's bang on. He'll help you set things up internationally if you're there in Canada. Aaron, not Eric. Let's see. When Swift starts to settle with XRP. Guess is as good as mine on that. My guess is this year, in 2024, they will adopt XRP for settlement. At least at some percentage of the volume. I'm not saying it's the whole network, all 5 trillion transactions a day, but I think you could see 10% of it, and then scale up over time. It's kind of my expectation for Swift and their adoption of XRP for international settlement. And here's the other thing. So when I was at Swell, they talked about ODL, They're using Tether in certain jurisdictions because it's more liquid than XRP at the current time. I don't know what the implications for Tether and the broader markets is going to be now that we have a Bitcoin ETF. I posted on Twitter earlier today. Does Tether pose a systemic risk now that Bitcoin has ETFs? I think the answer is yes. But we will see. We'll see with the stablecoin regulation. But I think to use XRP for all of those transactions, it's got to be the most liquid asset. It has to have the most liquidity in it, and you're probably going to have to remove Tether in order to do that. So we'll see. Was my attempt an SEC pun? I think it's all a grand plan. Yeah, me too. Is there a minimum amount of XRP needed to have an account with Calvin Brown? Nope, they will open an account for anybody, and you can just let it sit there until you want to fund it and execute a trade. The lawsuit brought me to crypto thanks to Gary Gensler. See, that's what I'm saying, man. Like, I think there's a lot of people that are here that have been able to accumulate a substantial amount of this asset that otherwise wouldn't have, and you got an extra 3 years for people. Matthew, any bold predictions for the year? Preferably something nobody really talking about. I mean, what I'm talking about for implementation of XRP to settle Bitcoin the ETF. I don't think anybody else is talking about that. We'll see if I'm right or wrong, right? Like, again, I don't have a crystal ball, but for Jay Clayton to mention the pipes and Ripple to be the plumbers, words mean things. So, maybe we do see some. If the ETFs start trading tomorrow, or maybe it's Monday, I don't know when they're going to start trading. Maybe we see some significant price appreciation on XRP to be able to facilitate all of the volume on the Bitcoin trades for the ETFs through the DTCC and Project Ion. We'll see. Shu, yes, this is recorded. Appreciate you being here. Family office can assist Australians. What's the minimum amount you'd be willing to assist us with setting up a family trust? I can connect you with Kent Shell. He's our contact there in Australia, and he has all the contacts when it comes to the lawyers and the estate planners and wealth managers there in Australia. And yeah, just reach out to me via the website. Just email me at I'll give you guys my email. Some people will watch this, and that's fine. I don't mind if y'all email me direct. Just jake@digitalfamilyoffice.io. You can ping me, and I'll send you his information so you can contact him there in Australia. What's your long term? What are the top 3 coins besides XRP? Ooh, good question, Lori. I think that there's going to be 3 to 5 main networks that the majority of this stuff gets built out on top of. Hedera Hashgraph, I think, will be it'll be the base layer for dApps and Web3, the XRPL. And then, I think XDC, like I said, bullish on that. XLM Hyperledger, bullish on that. Here's one that nobody else is talking about, and that's AGI or Singularity Net. I think IoT and the integration with AI is going to be pretty significant. IOTA, Algorand, both of those I think will do really well. I'm not a big fan of Quant. I don't get that one. I know some people think that that's going to be a big deal. It's do you pay fees to use the network with that? It doesn't make sense to me that it would be a high value. Maybe I'm completely wrong and I'm just ignorant. You can tell me so. It's fine. But I'm not a big fan of that one. VeChain, I like VeChain. But if I had to pick 3, it'd probably be Hedera, XLM, and Algorand. If I had to pick 3 other projects aside from XRP. Kelly says, have you heard of a form that you must now file with FinCEN? Yeah, it's BOI for LLCs. So, Kelly, you got in last year, so you're good. You don't have to file that till 2025 because you were proactive, which is great. People that file LLCs this year, you get 90 days. On any day that if you don't get it done in 90 days, then you're fined $500 per day for not having that form in, and that's not so fun. So ideally, you have a trust that owns the LLC and is the beneficiary, and then that way, you're situated. Cool. Appreciate you guys emailing me on that. And like I said, I'll get you those contacts. Probably gonna run maybe another 8 minutes here, and